Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Yes, we're going to be talking about pens, and we see two rotating in front of us, and you may be asking, Chris, why did you put these two pens together in one review? Well, as they vibrate a lot, let's change direction of rotation. So now we're moving in the other direction. One may say counterclockwise, but I digress. So this pen, which is really matte purple but looks black to me, has an interesting nib, and so does this Jinhua, which I'm calling a 86. Both of these I bought because of their nib. So what do they have in common? One, they're made in China. Two, they really resemble a very popular pen model, one vintage and one still in production. And of course, three is their ground nib, which I've learned to like. So we're going to explore these two pens individually because I filmed out individually. And then we're going to compare them to some other nibs, talk about some inks, and see whether I really like the grinds and if I find a difference between the grinds on these two pens. So with that, the crabs are going to give you a winky wink and we're going to dive in. So here we have the pen that was voted second to be reviewed from AliExpress. Certainly has a familiar shape and look to it. It's called a Nagti Pen Matte Purple. I don't know whether you can see that purple color or not. Let's bring in a matte black pen to see if that makes that purple pop, and I think it does, at least in my viewfinder. We'll get rid of the not needed pieces, and yeah, the purple looks purple now to my eyes. Pop off cap like you would expect from the design, and there's that nice nib. We're going to review this with a couple other nibs. It's going to be more of a nib focused video. Hopefully you appreciate that. And it's a cartridge converter. Interesting looking converter, but it's not compatible with the pen that it looks like. It's more of a Chinese standard. And this nib assembly doesn't seem to come out or unscrew or anything, so you're not going to be able to use this nib in other pens, unfortunately. Some people have asked. And here's a good example of one. Yes, it's a Jinhua. It came in this box. They seem to be doing quite a bit of this, at least some of the resellers. And if you look at the back, you'll see a very generic label. Peacock Blue 1. And yes, it does look like peacock blue. Just a regular stainless steel cap, brushed fairly plain. You're typical. But what's untypical is usually pens like this is a pull-off cap, but this one is threaded on. And it takes over 2.5 turns to take off the cap, which just makes no sense whatsoever. But I think this design was influenced by another pen maker. But what makes this pen is the nib. And it's that great ground nib. When I saw this pen being available, I said, let me add it to my collection. I have a bobby nib in a pen similar to this, the 51A, but this nib just has a lot more tipping material on it and an interesting grind. I'll be happy to put some ink in the pen and see how it works. Mr. Crab is done with his duties. This section just unscrews. A nice O-ring there, and you'll see a standard Jinhua converter, which we've seen many, many times. So that's the pen. I'm going to find a suitable ink. I have one in mind. Here, I can ink it up and see how that nib works. Stay tuned. So in the box with this Jinhua pen with the great nib was the original nib, probably an extra fine. So if I wanted to swap back to the original nib, I could. Nice of them to include that in the package. So this pen, very simple, the parts that make it up: cap, barrel, section, converter. Everything fits together well. You know, it's a pen that's been around for a while from Jinhua, and they haven't really changed it. What makes this pen is the nib. So I'm pen pals with Matt at the Wet Pen, and he was so kind as to send me 3 bottles of the ink that he has made, and we're going to pick Elliott Bay to put into that Jinhua. I think the nib will make it very nice. You know, Rainier Blue is really intense, nicely done blue, and Deception Pass is similar to Elliott Bay, but just a different shade. So the Wet Pen has done an excellent job in packaging. Comes in a cardboard box. I cut it here to open it up. Really nice graphics. Very well done. And here's the bottle. Very nice bottle. Very usable. Again, similar types of graphics. And we have the description at the bottom of the bottle. Kudos to a first ink maker in his first inks that he's made. Here's what it looks like on the paper towel. The blue comes out a little bit more than it did on the Tomoe River paper of my sample writing. But the ink has some nice properties to it. Can't wait to put it in the pen. Sound was off when I was writing, sorry about that, but they're very, very smooth. You're not going to hear much from the nibs on paper. Both of these nibs write very, very similar. They can lay down a very, very broad line. They're extremely smooth. So I inked up the Jinhua pen first and wrote with it, and the nib was okay, but not great. Then I inked up the AliExpress pen with a similar ink from the Wet Pen, and that nib felt much nicer on paper, so I looked at him closely under the loupe. And the Temu long knife nib seemed to not be as smooth as the AliExpress nib was, so I just took a little bit of micro mesh, did some figure eights, and now the Temu nib writes as good as the AliExpress nib. They're both great writers, but I only paid under $4 or $5 for the AliExpress pen, and I paid over $15 for the Temu pen. But I like the pen that this is in, even though the cap takes almost 3 turns to take off. I'm not a fan of the Lamy design with the triangular shaped section, but I wanted to see what the nib was like. A lot of people do like that design, so AliExpress would be a great buy if you're interested in a nib like this. So I had to also show the last ground nib I got, which is in a Jinhua 80, and it's a sharper grind, gives more line variation than either the Naginati nib or the long knife nib that we have up here. These are softer, more rounder. Some people have trouble with sharper nibs, so that's the difference in writing. This takes what I would call a more practiced hand, and if you get off of the sweet spot and onto the edges, it can feel a little sharp, but I enjoy the line it puts down. So these 3 ground calligraphy nibs all add some character to your writing. They're all slightly different. The one on the left is the Jinhua 81, which feels like it's a crisper line on paper. Not certain if the camera's picking up those nuances, but hopefully we'll find out when I look at the replay. But if you're dissatisfied with just extra fine nibs from Chinese pens, look up these nibs. They have many different descriptions. So if you're in the market, most of these listings have some fairly close-up pictures of the nibs, so you can look at them and determine whether they'd be something you'd like to write with. I certainly think they add a lot of character, make your writing a little bit differently, bolder, and that I enjoy. So I've come to the conclusion of this video focusing on nibs. Hopefully you've enjoyed it and maybe feel adventurous enough to try one of these in your hand. 3 different styles, 3 different pens. My personal preference is the Jinhua 80. I just like the shape, the way it feels in the hand. The 86 is just not something that's ever going to find a spot in my rotation of writing. And the same with the Lamy style pen. But I wanted to be able to show you 3 different variations, and hopefully that was entertaining, educational. With that, we've reached the end of the video, and I hope it finds everyone safe, healthy, and happy, finding a nib you love and a pen you love, encouraging you to put down a line of ink, because that's what these were designed for. We've reached the end. Thank you all for watching again, and we will say bye. Enjoy the day. Enjoy every moment.